This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. I want to talk about focus today. What do we focus on? Humanity today focuses on, generally, what we're told. What do the biggest players tell us? The biggest media players, what do they tell us? That's where we focus. Now, of course, there can be people like me, little guys on the outside, essentially little networks, who get people to focus on different things, to be more skeptical, to think about the scientific method, to go down a different path. But I'm competing against those big monoliths. I'm competing against those big networks. But do you ever really think about focus? What you are focusing on? For example, we just had in America the State of the Union address by the president. Everyone focused on this. Stories constantly. What people said, what they were wearing. Did people scowl? Were they happy? Did they clap? This big show of nonsense, because when it comes down to it, everyone knows there's two sides in America, and the two sides are smaller government, bigger government. And the leaders that represent those sides might not represent those two ideals directly or accurately at all times, but that is the divide. More government, less government. Everything else is a show. So that's an example of where we are forced to focus. Now, how does that help you to make money in the markets? It doesn't. How does that help you to be an entrepreneur? It doesn't. It's mental masturbation, and we're all addicted to it. I'm just as guilty as anyone else. Now, I am able to detach a little bit better. That's perhaps because I do find myself spending significant time outside of the United States. I have perspective that's probably different. Actually, not probably, a lot different than my fellow Americans that spend all of their time inside the borders. Because when you're inside the borders, that megaphone, those monoliths, those networks, wow, what you hear ringing in your ears, it's a million times more than what I hear. I hear it some, don't get me wrong, because the American story is pushed across those networks, across the globe, and everyone is forced to deal with our insanity. But it's less when you're outside the borders. But again, why is this stuff important? Who gives a crap about these particular issues in the grand scheme of things? In 10 years, will anybody really care? Will anybody really give a shit about the State of the Union in 2019? No. No one will remember. No one will care. It's not relevant. It's not important. At least if you're the kind of individual that wants to make a dent, who wants to make something happen in your freaking lifetime that's more than social media angst, social media back and forth with some stranger that you'll never meet, trying to convince him or her to your perspective. And again, I am somewhat guilty of this sometimes too. But I'm also very good at detaching. I don't hold on to this nonsense. I jump in, I look at it, I comment, I get the hell out. Again, focus. I'm talking about the focus of the monoliths, but I'm also giving a focus myself. I caught an excerpt the other day that really sums this up nicely. from Ryan Holiday in the film Hoaxed. It's a documentary, and Ryan gives this nice perspective about how we are kind of funneled into where we focus. I want to play this short clip. It really sets the tone.
What you see in a newspaper or on TV, it's a small fraction of reality, right? There's all the things that have happened. There's all the things that they know about. There's all the things that they decided to write about. There's the things that they decided to write about that you saw, right? And it goes down and down until you're at that individual article. And so you think that when you're reading the news that you're being informed, that you're educating yourself, that you're seeing how the world is, but you're seeing such a tiny fraction of the world. And so you could argue that in a way, the media is designed not to inform you, but to keep you uninformed. And that's really scary, that the bubble that we all live in that has no real higher obligation anymore to this sort of philosophical idea of truth is a scary thing.
I love that bit from Ryan. He completely nails it. They're only giving us the small piece. Let me put a concrete example together. Recently, I received an email. This guy really wanted to zing me. He thought he had something on me. It was one of those trend following no longer works, trend following is dead emails. And he cited this big source, this big trend following trader who had said that he was putting less of his assets at trend following. So this guy hits me back and he's like, "Oh, now what are you going to say, Covel? You're all fucking wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. Now look what happened." I calmly replied. I said, "Look, here's the perspective that I take on it." And I cited my work. Now, my work is not a one-line answer. This guy wanted a one-line answer because that's the way his brain works. A very simple, amoeba-like brain wants a one-line answer. Does not want to dig into anything. Because after this guy finishes sending me the question, he changes out of his dirty tighty-whities that he's wearing in his mom's basement into a pair of clean ones because he feels rejuvenated. But I replied, "Here's my podcast with all of the episodes from all of the trend following traders going back 5, 6, 7 years. I then referenced my books, specifically my trend following book. Now, anyone that listens to this podcast knows, or anyone who has read my books knows, it's a lot of information. So if one person says something negative, just one line of negativity, and there's no follow-up questioning, and it's just reported in the media, I don't know the full context. I don't know what this person might be doing in terms of their portfolio exactly. I have no earthly idea. But what I can respond with is the totality of the entire industry, all of the players, all of the track records, all of the information going back literally decades. And that's my side of the argument. My side of the argument is all of that. Now, this poor dude in his tighty whities, all he had was, "Hey man, somebody said trend following's dead. Now what do you say, Covel? Ha 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 ha." I mean, this is the typical trolling behavior of modern life. But you still shake your head. How does somebody come to focus like that? They come to focus like that exactly how Holiday said. Because he doesn't have the perspective I have. He has a very narrow perspective to where he saw one article by one author with a few comments, and that's it. That poor guy does not have the mental acuity to actually dig in, dive in, and look at everything. And then decide to himself, does the argument make sense that trend following is not viable? Just one little example. You yourself right now can probably think of another example in your life, some other issue where someone takes a narrow perspective from one article and literally changes their life, changes their mind. They go with just a little bit of information, and that's all they need. It's quite amazing. And that gets back to Holliday's point, which is the media is not really designed to inform you. It's designed to keep you not informed. Because this poor guy was already convinced. Why should I listen to anything Covel says? Because I have this one line, I have this one sentence, I can grasp onto it, I can hold on to it. It doesn't make a difference what anyone else says. It doesn't make a difference what any of the evidence is. This is enough. That's actually the definition of propaganda. To take an empty vessel like this poor guy in his tighty whities, and honestly, I don't know if he's in his tighty whities, but I would bet with a high degree of confidence he is. Because what kind of normal person behaves that way? You know, just some kind of floating through life person who is kind of angry at himself, has not really achieved very much. And those are the kinds of individuals that get locked on to these one lines. They get locked on to the angst that comes from one article. And oh, by the way, you can find Ryan Holiday across my podcast. I think he's been on 4 or 5 times. Fabulous insights. I will have to reach out to him and have him on again in the near future because he always brings a great perspective. Here's another great example of focus. What I might want to focus on. It's a quotation from Alan Watts, the Eastern philosopher. You're only making a mess by trying to put things straight. You're trying to straighten out a wiggly world, and no wonder you're in trouble. Now, Alan actually gives the rejoinder to my angry guy that was convinced trend following was finished. Because he wanted the straight line. He wanted that straight line, and the straight line doesn't exist. The world is wiggly. And if you don't see the world as wiggly, if you don't see the world as volatile, if you don't see the world as up and down, that's when you are in trouble. You want to be the person that can take the punch. You want to be the person that can get your ass kicked, take a shot, take a loss, and survive. As long as you're not dead, you're winning. Think about it. I've said it on the podcast before. It's stolen a touch from Nassim Talib. But as long as you're not dead, you're winning. If you're dead, you're out. You lost. It's over. But if you can accept that volatility of life, no matter what you're dealing with, relationship, friendship, business, markets, it's the straight line people that fail. The straight line people that are fragile. They have the glass chin. When I walk down the street, I sometimes say to myself, okay, what if somebody jumps on me and starts trying to kick my ass? I'm prepared at any point in time to fight back. Not because I'm some nut job walking down the street thinking about starting a fight. Far from it. But I've seen crazy stuff happen. And so you just always got a very small percentage of your brain aware. How will you respond to the unexpected? What will you do? If someone jumps on you and starts kicking your ass, and you just happen to be walking down the street, are you just going to let your ass get kicked? Or are you going to kick someone else's ass? But they were a lot bigger than me. Well, then you're fucking dead. You got to go down swinging in the sense that it's about survival. Again, if you're dead, it's over. And when I say dead, it's kind of like the guy that wrote me about trend following. His mind is dead. It's not just dead in the physical sense. It's dead in the mental sense. It's dead in the intellectual sense. If you can't think it through, you're over. Here's another great example of thinking it through. It's a long quotation from Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. A great, interesting backstory, a controversial character. But for 20 years, I've been checking out lines from his blog, various things he said. And yes, again, he could be controversial. He's going to piss some people off. But at his entrepreneurial root, Cuban is spot on. To quote Mark Cuban, one of the great lies of life is follow your passion. Everybody tells you, follow your passion, follow your passion. I used to be passionate to be a baseball player. Then I realized I had a 70-mile-an-hour fastball. I used to be passionate about being a professional basketball player. Then I realized I had a 7-inch vertical. There are a lot of things I'm passionate about. A lot. The things I ended up being really good at were the things I found myself putting effort into. A lot of people talk about passion, but that's not really what you need to focus on. You really need to evaluate and say, okay, where am I putting in my time? Because when you look back at where you put your time in, where you put your effort, that tends to be the things that you're good at. And if you put in enough time, you tend to get really good at it. If you put in enough time and you get really good, I will give you a little secret. Nobody quits anything they're good at because it's fun to be good. It's fun to be one of the best. But in order to be one of the best, you have to put in the effort. So don't follow your passions, follow your effort. I'm going to give you one other little secret. The one thing in life that you can control is your effort. End quote from Mark Cuban. Now again, this is all about focus. This is where I'm putting my focus today. Now tell me, is that quote not 1,000,000 times more important than anything that you heard at the State of the Union, the response to the State of the Union, the panelists and analysts that responded to the State of the Union, the media coverage about the State of the Union? All of that was absolute nonsense compared to what I just read from Mark Cuban. So why the hell do we not hear those kinds of messages from the major media players? The major media players don't care about the freaking truth. What they care about are eyeballs, and they care about your eyeballs because your eyeballs give them money, and it's a business. You've been seduced. You've been suckered. You're inside the matrix. How the hell do you get out? You only get out if you listen to voices that appear to not be bought and paid for. Now, maybe you say to yourself, this guy Covel sounds kind of interesting. But maybe, just maybe, some billionaire somewhere is padding his pocket to say all this shit. And maybe Covel is not really free. Maybe he can't say certain things. There's no doubt that I feel like these days with social media, certain things are off limits. At least in the current incarnation of the modern town square, we are at a point where you can't say some things. Now, of course, there's always been a point you can't say some things. Screaming fire in a crowded theater is obviously stupid, but you can't do that. But it's been taken up a notch recently to where the controllers of social media have partisan views and only want certain things said. So yeah, I don't like that. And yes, I'm controlled by that. But what I try to do in this podcast is just be real about where I put my focus. Because I don't want to focus on the nonsense. I want to focus on something absolutely valuable, like the point that Ryan Holiday makes, like the point that Mark Cuban makes. I don't know their exact politics. I don't really care. When I hear Ryan Holiday say what he says, when I hear Mark Cuban say what he says on these two examples, okay, maybe they have their partisan view that they want to have, but I know at their core, They're good people. They're good thinkers. Well, I can't really say they're good people, and you can't know whether I'm a good person or not. But all we can do is share good thinking. And good thinking is about all we damn got. The moment the good thinking is gone, the moment that we don't have the ability to analyze, to be skeptical, to throw some scientific method at it. And look, hey, my example I gave of the guy in his tighty whities complaining that trend following was dead. He was trying to be skeptical. But the moment that I countered him with a wide rejoinder, a wide canvas of information for him to dissect, well, that's not what he wanted to hear, because he wanted to be right. He did not want to learn. And that's the real trick for all of us today in modern society. Do we want to be right, or do we want to learn? That's all that matters. That's the important question. Do you want to be right, or do you want to learn?
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.